Howdy, I'm Doc Hanna. I smoke cigars and I know things. It's been a while since we talked. When last I was out on the air, I had a podcast called Straight Talk. Before that, I had a radio show of the same name. Took a little time to write and to live some life, and now I am back to share what little nuggets of wisdom I've come up with over the years. That sound is me smoking a cigar. If you're offended by smoking cigars, you should probably just quit right now, because this is an important part of what I do. For the last few years, I've been at Outlaw Cigar in Overland Park, Kansas, smoking cigars for a living. Oh, and occasionally doing some other stuff too. And today I am smoking a Murcielago Lancero from Espinosa Cigars. This was a gift from my friend Big Tony. He's the representative for Espinosa Cigars. And Tony was nice enough to give me this really tasty, full-bodied cigar. If you get a chance to try the Murcielago and you like full-bodied cigars, I encourage you to do it because it's mighty good. The Lancero, which is a small, thin cigar, about 38 ring gauge by about 7 inches long, has a lot of great flavor to it. Really good with black coffee, and that's how I'm enjoying it today. Like I said, every now and again you'll hear that little noise. That's just me smoking a cigar. Well, as I said, for the past couple of years, I've been working on a couple of other projects. And why don't we catch up a little bit before we move on? A couple of years ago, I started working on a web TV project called At the Crossroads. And the premise was the intersection of cigar shop life and other parts of life. I think it was a pretty good idea. We shot some pilot episodes. I wrote some scripts. We got to working on things, and for one reason or another, it just didn't work out. Fortunately, I still have the scripts, and if it works out someday, maybe I'll get to be a little bit famous. But the basic premise of At the Crossroads was that people you meet in a cigar shop, you talk to over cigars, have interesting backstories, and they have interesting things in their lives. And it's a great chance then to see different parts of life that you don't otherwise encounter. I still think that's a good premise. So we're going to explore that in some different ways here on I Smoke Cigars and I Know Things, the podcast. Well, something else that's going on here is that I'm approaching my 60th birthday. Now, some of you may tune out now. Okay, boomer, right? The current anti-old people bias in our country. I get it. I get that the young want to be young, the young want to be in control, but they really do overlook what experience and the wisdom that can come from that offers. So here at I Smoke Cigars and I Know Things, today we're going to talk about getting old. It's not for cowards. I know you were expecting something else. You're not going to hear profanity really here on the podcast. It's not necessary. It worked well for George Carlin, worked well for Richard Pryor, but I'm not nearly the writer or deliverer that they are. So I'm just going to avoid it. How's that sound? Getting old is not for cowards. I've had a few years to think about this. You know, we all look at major milestones in our lives. And for me, turning 60 is one of them. Back when I was a kid, the idea of turning 60 was foreign to me. Frankly, I didn't think I'd live this long. But here I am. I'm staring 60 in the face. And a few observations. So, hey, it's Doc Hanna. And I'm going to sing a song for you, and Bill's going to tell you a thing or two. If you get that reference, you're going to get the rest of this show. If not, let me unpack it for you. Fat Albert. A cartoon from the 1970s. It was written and produced by Bill Cosby. Bill Cosby, who now is known as something of a bad guy. I think he's still in prison. Back then, he was considered kind of the second coming of Dr. Spock, the child psychologist, and one of the greatest entertainers of the time. And Fat Albert was his effort to provide positive, uplifting cartoons for mostly minority children. All the characters in Fat Albert were black. They were based on Bill Cosby's own upbringing on the streets of Philadelphia as a young boy. And the main character was Fat Albert. Now, Fat Albert, today that'd be a problem. Having the word fat in the title of a TV show and it also being the name of the principal character, it wouldn't fly. And so let's go back in time. Hey, it's Fat Albert. Fat Albert was the kid who wanted to succeed in life and was tempted by the streets. He was tempted by bad life. He was tempted by things that pretty much every 10-year-old kid gets tempted by, the urge to shoplift, to not pay attention to your parents, to want to skip school. And in the end, he'd always learn an important lesson about life, along with his friends, Weird Harold, Mushmouth, and I think there was another kid that was actually young Bill Cosby. In retrospect, having Bill Cosby be a moral guide for kids is kind of a problem. Later on in the theme for Fat Albert, you get the words, and Bill's going to help you learn a thing or two. What we know about Bill Cosby today and his practice of giving women roofies and then raping them, it wouldn't be good to learn what Bill had to teach. But that was the 70s. Fat Albert, Cheech and Chong, George Carlin, Steve Martin, they were major cultural influences for me and a lot of people. My writing style, my comic delivery, they were influenced by those characters. Maybe not so much Fat Albert, but definitely Cheech and Chong and the others. Now, George Carlin, great counterculture comedian, he died too young. Cheech Marin's still around. Tommy Chong is still around. Steve Martin is still around. Steve Martin, who's an absolutely brilliant writer and performer, has helped to reinvigorate the idea of podcasting. With his show that he does with Martin Short, Only Murders in the Building, their characters do a crime podcast. Also recently, here in Kansas City, people have been enamored of Travis Kelce and his brother Jason Kelce's podcast. And so podcasting is seeing a resurgence. Now, I know there are currently 1.5 million podcasts, 1.5 million people with voices, all thinking someone is interested in what they have to say. I'm adding my voice back to the den. So let's see what we can do. My perspective, a 60-year-old man, a cigar smoker, an aficionado of the Old West, and someone who just sometimes likes to hear the sound of his own voice. Stick around. Let's see what we can do. As I said, I'm about to turn 60. And it's given me a chance to think about some things having to do with a man turning 60 years old. Everybody's full of advice. The first one I get, and I hear it a lot, it's not the years, it's the mileage. Well, yeah, I'm turning 60, but my odometer has turned over a couple of times. I got plenty of mileage on me. And you know, everything wears down and everything wears out. And so I'm starting to experience that now. My knees, the product of decades, we'll say, of abuse, with a few sharp incidents of injury, are now taking the toll. I had my left knee operated on here a few months ago, a partial replacement of my left knee, which I'm rehabbing from. And next up, I get my right knee, a total knee replacement, coming up in April. I'll be out for a few weeks, which is going to give me time to work on another podcast. So, hey, win-win, right? Well, I'm going to get to a point where I have enough metal parts that I'm going to tell my wife when I die, she should have me cremated so she can recycle the metal. I'm confident that titanium in my joints will make more money than, say, stolen catalytic converters. So, there. You may consider this an official request. When I die, make sure you tell Nicole. Doc said he wants to be cremated and recycle the metal. Another old callback, the $6 Million Man. $6 Million Man. Steve Austin, another 1970s TV show with Lee Majors, was about a NASA test pilot who is catastrophically injured. And they replace both of his legs, one of his arms, and one of his eyes. Now, they don't say if any of his, manly bits were affected, but I'm going to assume that everything was good, because he was an action hero of the 70s and the ladies loved him. But $6 million for 2 super-powered legs, a super-powered arm with kung fu grip, and an eye that would telescopic and would see at night and all this stuff. And he worked as a super secret spy guy, ran around in a tracksuit. Tracksuits were very popular in the 70s. Now they're really only popular among Armenian gangsters? Now you can still buy a tracksuit and you can buy Adidas. So if you want, you can look like Steve Austin. But Steve Austin, $6 million, 2 legs, an arm, and an eye. Well, today, $6 million will buy you a pair of knees and a pack of hearing aid batteries. Ask me how I know. My, this is a fine cigar. Another saying, I'm not as good as I once was, but I'm as good once as I was. We all know what that means. It's that as a man gets older, his virility drops a little bit. Well, I'm not as good as I once was, but I am good once as I was, as long as it's before 10 p.m. How's that? Because when you reach a certain age, you like going to bed at 10 o'clock at night. You like getting a good night's sleep. So, no, I don't stay up all night anymore. If something runs past 10 o'clock and I can't record it, I probably won't watch it. If something runs past 10 o'clock and I have to be out of the house after 10, I probably won't do it. Eddie Murphy, he had a song back in the day called Party All the Time. Now, that's when Eddie Murphy was in his 30s. Now, Eddie Murphy, who's somewhere in my age, I bet he goes to bed at 10 o'clock at night. That's right. So Eddie Murphy's new song, Party All the Time before 10 o'clock. Well, 8 hours of sleep is a good thing. I usually get 6 or so, and it seems to be, interrupted, broken up, which is normal, I'm told, as you get older. But I'm still well rested at 6 or 7 hours of sleep. But I love me a nap. A nap. Naps are cool. When you're a kid, you hate naps. You fight them. I don't want to take a nap. But as you get older, you recognize the beauty of an afternoon nap. With an afternoon nap, you'd stay up till 11. And then the party really starts. You think Eddie Murphy takes naps? I bet he does. 60 is the new 40. 60 is the new 40 is another saying. This is fairly new. And, it's pretty self-explanatory, right? Men and women who are 60 years old now have the lifestyles of people in their 40s. Back in the day, 60 to 65 were the 5 years in your professional work life before you retired. Things are slowing down. You're putting a grandchild on your knee. You're knitting or you're fishing. But 60 was the point at which in your life when you looked forward and you saw your death. Because once you retired, there wasn't much left. A movie from the 80s, On Golden Pond. It had a character who was 80 years old. And it was played by a character who's 80 years old. Or played by an actor, who's 80 years old. And that was groundbreaking for its time because it showed an 80-year-old retired guy. Now, that 80-year-old retired guy, he lived on a lake. He fished a lot, and he died, I believe, in the movie. But an 80-year-old in a movie. He's 20 years older than what was considered old people. Another movie of the time, Cocoon. The actor who appeared to be the oldest in the whole movie was Wilford Brimley. Yet he was only 57 years old, playing an old guy. Now, for Wilford Brimley, that kind of makes sense. If you think about Wilford Brimley, he looked old when he was in his 40s in The Thing. That big old walrusy mustache, and I'm sure his diabetes didn't do him any favors, but at 57, he was playing a retired guy. Today, people would complain that that lacks representation. How dare you have a man younger than 70 play a 70-year-old? The concept of actors, people who act, who pretend to be something they're not, who convince you that they're something they're not, is kind of going by the wayside, and it's kind of sad. But there are really good actors who are older playing roles of older people. There was a TV series called Grace and Frankie. And Grace and Frankie was really cool for what it showed. It showed two women in their 70s, even turning 80. And it was an honest look at what it means to turn 80. But it was also comic, and the characters had energy, even as they faced the inevitability of their physical decline and their cognitive decline. It was a great show. It had Jane Fonda and Lily Tomlin, and it had a number of other actors who also were older playing their age. Ernie Hudson from Ghostbusters, who is, I'm going to say, roughly 10 years younger than Lily Tomlin, played her boyfriend. And it was a great part. Sam Waterston, who's also somewhere 70s, and Martin Sheen, 70-ish, 75, 80. Hard to tell. I first saw Martin Sheen on Apocalypse Now. And Apocalypse Now came out like in 1979. Well, now he plays an old man and facing the things that happen to old men. There's a new release movie called 80 for Brady. And it's also a comedy with some of the same people. It has Jane Fonda in it. It has Lily Tomlin, it has Rita Moreno, and Sally Field. And they play four retired women who travel to see Tom Brady play football. And I haven't seen it yet, but I anticipate it has some of the same themes. The age differences. Played for comedy, but also played for emotion. The people that watch it will likely be older moviegoers. Other shows that have older actors, and they're playing old. The days when someone would play a character significantly younger than them and try to pass it off, maybe they're going away, or maybe there's less of it. We look at actors that we knew from the 70s, from the 80s, even from the 90s, who are now, on the right side of what they call the prime. Guys like Steve Martin, people like Martin Short, Jane Fonda. They are finding their acting voice, playing characters like them. Well, you know what? Jane Fonda's 80 years old. I'm turning 60. I'm going to say that gives me a measure of anticipation that I'll still have my voice as a speaker, as a broadcaster, as someone who's doing things in public till I turn 80. And who knows what life will be like then? Who knows what medical advances will allow me to be a decrepit old fart at 80 years old. 60 is the new 40, but is 70 the new 50? Yeah, we could say that. But is 80 the new 60? At this point in time, I don't think so. At this point in time, 80 is 80. I think that big decline happens for most people between 70 and 80. Our Social Security retirement system recognizes this. My Social Security eligibility date is 67. Now, fortunately, the mean lifespan of a man in the United States is 78 years of age. If I hit the average, I got 11 great years of retirement. Now, to help things along, I married a younger woman. My wife, she's a decade plus, and that plus is important, younger than me. A very energetic woman, and one for whom I look forward to enjoying the retirement age because, I'm going to need somebody young and energetic to push my wheelchair around because I'm going to be an old fart. Look towards the end of life. Neil Young, a long time ago, sang a song, and in that song it said, "It's better to burn out than to fade away." Well, old Neil Young is fading away. He's 77. Yeah, he's turned to an old man yelling at clouds like Homer Simpson's dad, but he's 77, and he still tours now and again. The Rolling Stones, I think they're somewhere around 100, and they still tour. Tom Jones, 82 years old, and Tom Jones is still touring. Now, Tom Jones is a lot harder on his body, I think, than I ever was, and I'll say I was no slouch. And Tom Jones is still going strong. So there is hope for old Doc. 60 is not the end. 60 may be the beginning of a new chapter, and I am looking forward to it. You know, I'm not as good as I once was, but I am as good once as I was, but maybe not once. Maybe between cigars, active life, lots of artificial parts, and a fine wife, I'm going to have myself a fine, fine decade coming up. What about you? Are you reaching a certain age? Are you thinking about milestones? Are you listening to this and thinking, I'm never going to be as old as that guy? Well, I'll tell you, brother, I once thought like you. I once thought that if I hit 50, I'd be doing well. And to be honest, there were some nights when I never thought I'd see the dawn. But that happened. And here I am, 15 pounds of titanium parts and still going strong. I'm going to enjoy the rest of my cigar here, and I hope to talk to you again soon. I'm Doc Hanna. I'm an old soldier, lawman, and paramedic. I smoke cigars, and I know things. I'll talk to you again soon.
Someday she's happy, she's glad I'm around. Other days not as much, she don't make a sound. No, it's just like I'm invisible, invisible. Someday she says that she can't wait till I get home. Other days, it feels like I'm in this love alone. She makes me feel invisible, invisible. I don't know how, I don't know when. Why can't she love me again? Some days I come home and I need a rest. It feels like I'm intruding, some kind of pest. Get away, pest. Once again, I feel invisible, invisible. One day I'll wake up from my lonely nightmare, and I'll find someone who really cares. Yes, I will. Until that day, I'll be invisible, invisible. I don't know how, and I don't know when. Why can't she love me again? Invisible, invisible.